The storyline behind how Crooks actually came to be on the building to take those shots allegedly is simply unbelievable. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Chris Martenson. It is day 6 of Trump's assassination attempt, and we're going to keep digging in. If you saw the other episode before, we were talking about how there were 2 shooters. Today, we're going to be talking about this stuff. Topics for today very quickly. How did Crooks get on the building? We're going to take a little tour because this is a big part of the messy storyline over who was responsible, how did he get there, finger pointing between local Pennsylvania officials and the Secret Service, etc. We're going to do an update on the unbelievability of the security lapses with emphasis on unbelievable, as in unbelievable. Mayorkas and Cheadle, well, they just have to go. Absolutely have to go. Zero confidence can remain in either of those two jamokes. And now we have to ask the question, who made the decisions as well? Is it possible that Crooks was misidentified, wasn't the shooter, the person we see on the roof? I see lots of that going around. So we're going to talk about that. Now, I'm reasonably confident that this is accurate, and we have lots of people going over this right now. We're going to have experts pouring through every single part of this. In fact, I want to announce something. We're starting a citizens investigation into this. Look, whatever's happening with the FBI, the Secret Service, the whole sort of like DC swamp, if they're not going to be looking into this, well, then maybe we should. And I will look into this. I'm happy to take lead on this. We've already assembled really good expertise. If you have other expertise, we would love to have you on board. Do you know stuff about audio? Are you particularly good sleuth of things on the internet? Can you help find videos that maybe we haven't seen or analyzed yet and can bring them forward? Do you know anything at all about tactics or operations, or do you have any inside connections in EC? And are you a gadfly? I love people coming and taking their best shots with logic, not just going, you've done a bad job. We get those people. They're not helpful. But somebody who can come in and go, here's how you've misanalyzed this. Here's how you could think about it differently. I see how you came to this conclusion. I come to a different one. That role is valuable. So if you're a gadfly and naturally skeptical or contrarian, you'd be well recognized and valued within our community back at Peak Prosperity. Okay, so that's kicking off. Now, let's start here. This is the event location. Okay. This is after the event happened. Obviously, this is post-shooting, and you still see the big American flag waving in the breeze there, right? Ooh. And that's the facility back there. That's the American Glass Research Building, right? And let me get my tool out here real quick. So, come on. Yeah, it's taking me a second. There we go. So right here, where the red dot is, that's where Crooks was found. He's dead. We've seen the images. He's just mysteriously lying there, dead, blood, and nobody around him. And you can see, too, that this is post-after effect, after action, and here's a few people walking around. But you don't see, like, I'm not so sure this whole scene has been really, well, I don't know. It just doesn't, there's no crime tape. I don't see people poring over the things that I would be poring over, which is, what are the bullet angles and where did they all come from? We need to know this. It feels like they're already starting to settle on this idea that there was a lone, mentally ill, that's the story they're going with now, believe it or not, undiagnosed mental illness, must have been shooter. That's what they're going with. Now, let's look at this facility again, because I'm going to show you exactly how he probably got on here, why this was a colossal security error. And error, like it's so colossal, you're like, that can't, no way did somebody make that accidentally, right? So we're pointing towards the idea that if you have to guess, intentional, they let it happen or they enabled it to happen versus it was just a complete colossal screw up of security errors that cascade and compounded on top of each other. Where do you lie? I'm going to show you it's pretty hard to think this is just people being dummies, particularly knowing the kinds of people who are attracted to these sorts of roles in sniper positions and things like that. None of them are dummies that I've met. Okay, so here you can see the facility over here, and this is the whole American Glass facility, and this is the side over here where there were some ladders. We'll take a look at that. And let's go around. But first, let's orient ourselves. Now, we all know that there's this big ladder right here. I'm pretty sure that SWAT put this up. I don't know when. So here's what we're going to try and resolve. When did these things happen? The whole idea is that Crooks came in with a 5-foot ladder somehow, and he had a gun, and he had a backpack. All those things must have been true for him to get on the roof, we're told. I'm not as clear about the latter part anymore. You can still see his gun on the roof. His body has been blurred out, just in case anybody is, offended by that. But there's a ladder here. I don't believe this is the ladder he used. So check this out. Let's go to this facility now. Here we are in Google Earth, and so Street View, and it's a very different time of the year. This is taken last year sometime. You can see there's no leaves on the trees, so at a minimum, it's very early this past spring these pictures were taken, or the fall, or who knows when, but this is sometime before the shooting, obviously. This is the building that he was on top of right here, and one of these buildings, we were told, was being used as a staging area by local law enforcement as well as Secret Service. We don't know which building. That part isn't clear. We can very clearly see here, if we came in and rotate carefully, there's no ladder in here at this point in time. There's no ladder. Now, we had been told that ladder was installed there by the company, but everybody I've talked to says, no, that's stupid. Companies don't install ladders up onto their roofs. It's called an attractive nuisance, and your lawyers and your insurance agents yell at you for being dummies, right? So you can throw that right out the window. That ladder was not there. It's not there in this picture, and it wouldn't make sense for it to be there later as a matter of official company policy. Now, the ladder spot, they say that we see there was a ladder in this other photo. It's right there. Okay, so right here, turns out there is a little 5 foot, looks like a 5-foot ladder. Let's test that. Let's see if that's actually the case. So this is the spot that it's on. It's on top of whatever this gray cabinet is here. Is it an AC unit? We don't know. But it would be a great spot to get on the roof, because if we consider that the average door is 80 inches, and I'm trusting this is an average size door, 80 inches is 6 foot 6 inches, or 6.66 feet, sorry, just a little over 6 foot 6 inches. And we take that same door frame, copy paste, we put that green square here, that's half of it. That's 3/4 of it. 3/4 of 6.66 feet is 5 feet. So this is where we would have measured and predicted that a 5-foot ladder would have gone to, is just about there. And that's actually what we see in this picture almost perfectly, is that little thing coming up to right there. So it fits with the idea. They found a receipt for a 5-foot ladder in his wallet. But if this is true, if Crooks came and put that ladder up there, in this parking lot, which you can see is crawling with police and law enforcement vehicles even now after the effect, but this would have been secured territory. I mean, the chance of having success, coming across a parking lot with a ladder and chunking it up onto that metal box right there, and then climbing up it with a backpack and with a gun, seems a little dicey. Wouldn't you agree? That's, I don't know what to tell you, except that if that was the route, and that happened, I don't know how that could have happened either, except for the most extraordinary bad luck on the part of law enforcement ever in all of history, or something more nefarious, such as nobody being there to witness it because they've all been called to a meeting at a certain time, or they've been called away from their posts for some reason. So I would love to have some more information from local law enforcement about who was responsible, who was covering that spot. But it gets even weirder than that. Trust me. All right. So that's the measurement. We're going to use the same measurement technique here because, hey, we don't have time to go out there and get a tape measure out and visit the facility. So we just have to make some guesses, but they're pretty good guesses, right? Because we do know that the average commercial door height is 80 inches, at least 80 inches, but 80 inches is a pretty solid starting spot. Now, is a fascinating thing. The Peak Prosperity community is making really great observations about things, and I'm going to invite you to join our community. We are going to be over there chewing through this, all kinds of other things as they arise, because, hey, that's who we are. I'm an information scout. I'm an analyst. I'm like your personal analyst, but this community is like my personal set of scouts and analysts. Like, we're all in this together. And so this was a fascinating observation by member Knit Not Know, said, hey, this is the picture here we were supposed to, that was taken of Thomas Crooks allegedly snapped by a Secret Service agent saying, hey, this guy looks suspicious. Took a picture of him. Okay. And here you can see he's got that Demolition Ranch t-shirt and the jawline. It kind of looks a lot like him. He's got the glasses. And the observation is, hey, Knit Not Know said, plus I posted in another thread that the video of the shooter on the roof has dark, full, straight, nice looking hair. Look at that. It's all lustrous. Like, and if you watch, it's not a great video, but you can see him crawling. It's like a Breck hair commercial. It is bouncy and full. And he's right. Like, doesn't look like this hair at all. Thick and full and shiny, thin and greasy and straggly. Maybe while he was out there gathering his rifle, gathering his ladder and his backpack, maybe he brushed his hair. It took a little time. Wanted to look good for whatever was coming next in his life. I guess weird stuff. So, hey, if you want to come and join Peak Prosperity, we would love to have you there. And it's a fantastic community where we figure out what's going on in real time and we talk about everything. And by the way, you need to know what's going on in the world. You deserve to. Now, let's talk about his shooting position. He was in here in what they call Building 6 at the American Glass facility here, research facility. And so now we can figure this out pretty quick. These are your standard 80-inch doors. I've drawn one blue box around those doors, and I've slapped another blue box on top. So we have those 80 inches plus 80 inches. There's 3 stairs coming off of the parking lot. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Let's assume they're average 7.5-inch stairs. Could be a little less, could be 7.25, could be 7s. But they're somewhere in that zone. 7.5 is a pretty fair guess. And there's also up here, once we figure out the intersection of the 2 roof lines, that's the roof peak right there, which is about a foot above this blue box here. And then there's a ridge cap up there. We saw there's like some kind of ridge cap on top of where those 2 lines would have met. Say that's another 6 inches. Just guesses. 22.5 inches plus, which is what that turns into, plus 80 inches times 2, plus 6 inches for the cap, divide by 12, 15.7 feet above parking lot. This is going to be important because we have people working right now on doing 3D reconstructions, and it's vitally important that we know exactly the elevation of the shooter, how many inches above that ridge line he possibly was going to be, so that we can take the bullet trajectory, the stand, Trump on top of the stage, and then where the people were hit in the back stand. If we can draw that line straight out, then we can figure out pretty clearly exactly where those first shots came, at least the first 2 shots. The first 2, because we know where those went. The rest of them, big mystery. All right, so at least now we have an orientation. That's the building he was on. Now, here's the weird part about this. Once you get on this roof system, except for these 2 roofs right here, which are taller buildings, like I'll show you what those look like in a minute. This is from above, so it all looks kind of flat, but those 2 things in the orange boxes are tall enough that you would need more ladders to get on top of them. But all the rest of this complex here, once you get onto any one of these roofs here, you could go woo-loop and come across these little causeways or walkways. Like, I'm sure they're covered walkways that connect buildings. And you could go from here and jump up onto this one and come across here and down and across this little walkway and up onto this roof. So now we have to understand that he could get on here anywhere around this entire perimeter here. So we got to go take a look at that and say, did he come up on this little ladder right here? Or was there another place he could have gotten in here? And that's an important question. Now, here's that from the back side, you can see the famous water tower here. If you could see it and squint at it, there's some red barns which have the snipers on it here. This building is going to feature prominently in what we're going to talk about in just a minute, but I do want to point out a couple things. That there's an AC unit right there. There's your 80-inch door, so that's 6 feet 6 inches. This is just a hop and a skip and a jump just to get up from there to there. Same thing here. Look, that's a window right under my red dot. You can see that's very short to get from one. I mean, that looks like human height. Like somebody, if they could come in here unmolested and unnoticed, somebody could jump from here to here, and then they have access to the roof system, and they can get all the way over there. Now, let's think about this. If this is the American Glass Research Complex, which direction did he come from? Right? Exactly. Where, like, did he walk here across this busy road again, carrying a ladder, maybe? And a rifle, maybe. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And looking all suspicious. So there's a lot of open territory here that this guy has to walk across. And you're thinking, wow, how could he make it unnoticed? And the answer is he didn't. He was obviously noticed. A Secret Service agent took a snap of him, and we'll talk in a second about all the ways that he was noticed. So again, security lapse, or let's think this through again. has to be the most completely blatantly obvious security risk I could possibly imagine. Multiple little alley nested one-story ways to get onto a roof complex that allows you to get to a place where you can oversee the place that President Trump is talking. Obviously, this is a high security risk. You don't have to be a graduate of sniper school. You don't have to have gone through 4 years of Secret Service training. All you have to be is not a complete moron to know, yeah, that looks kind of unsecure. We should do something about that. And so I want to talk about the most obvious, blatantly obvious thing ever. They are trying to deflect us in various ways, and I don't like this. So we're going to use what we use, which is common sense. And we're going to say, you know what? I'm going to believe my own lion eyes and my ability to think clearly. So, little test. Let's imagine you're in charge of this whole thing, okay? Let's imagine that you come onto the facility and you see this, and this is where he shot from, right? This blue line shows, again, that's tracing, that shows exactly why that upper back right corner of the stands was hit and why 2 Vics were found there, right? I think we can clearly see that tracing arc if that was the direction the bullet was shot. Here is where Sniper Team 1 was, and here is where Sniper Team 2 was. I'm going to get to that in a minute because that's like really inexplicable. But this here, it's not that they should have had somebody on the roof Crooks was on. Nuh-uh. They should have had somebody on this roof, right in this corner. You can see everything. That is the most commanding spot. You are higher than the red roofs of the barn. You can see everything really clearly. You can obviously see this spot here, but you can also see this part of the roof. And if you turn around, you can see buildings out further. Like, this is it. Like, this is the spot. You got no trees in your way. It's awesome, right? But they didn't select that. They said, oh, out of all the things we're going to do, Secret Service, under Mayorkas, under Cheadle, out of everything we're going to do, we're going to just leave that whole complex to local law enforcement. We're not even going to check in with them, right? And by the way, this roof is a lot less slopey than either of the red barns. You can see how steep those are. Still pretty flat. But compared to this, yeah, this is your awesome, safest, OSHA-approved, non-snowflake sniper spot. You could put Kim Cheadle. So the question now has to be about this. Why did they not have a sniper team here? Now they're throwing out some junk, right? Some chaff in the air to lead us astray. And one of those things is they're telling us that they didn't have enough resources. They were under-resourced. Maybe some of the Secret Service resources got pulled off and were with Jill Biden at a nearby Pittsburgh event. They just didn't have enough people. They've been under-resourced. Junk. They had 2 sniper teams, 2 and 2. Okay. So we're going to have to talk about that because, well, it's the most obvious thing we could possibly notice. So the first thing is they say here on July 8th, an advanced team walked the site at the Butler Farm Show. That's July 8th, right? So this all went down on what, the 15th? No, 13th. Sorry. To assess security threat, agents worked with local law enforcement and explained what the Secret Service would handle and what law enforcement would be expected to do. Crucially, the Secret Service decided that a group of warehouses to the north of the stage would be excluded from the security zone, despite being only about 450 feet from Mr. Trump's podium. That was within, not just within rifle range, that's within handgun range. I got to be completely honest about that. Sometimes Evie and I, when we want to test ourselves, we will take our pistols to the 100-yard range and we hit stuff with it. Okay. And I'm talking like stuff, right? Not every time, but enough. So it's like, was within rifle range, says the person who knows dick all about guns. Like, no, journo person, that was within chip shot of rifle range. Okay. Who made that decision? Now, here's the thing I can't find out yet. This is still a mystery. We should know who the special agent in charge was of that site. They have a name. And that person, it's not like we don't want to hear from, yeah, go for it, senators. Call Kim Cheadle in and make her ring her over those hard questions you're asking. Who cares? She wasn't in charge of this site that day. We need to know who is in charge of the site that day because we need to know who made this decision. Because once again, that's a bizarre decision. Because you're in charge of this and theoretically you know how to run a site, you know how to run teams, you say you don't have enough resources, you're going to have to tap local law enforcement. But that would be the most obvious spot to put one of your two teams. Leave one of them on that other set of red barns over there, but this is where the other one goes, obviously, right? Okay, so again, this is from a still, like, oh, look at that lustrous hair. You can almost see it waving in there. Like, something's wrong with the hair. I got to agree with Knit Not Know. Hit peak prosperity. I have questions. The shooter, we will say, came from the rear and did so by crawling across this complex. So let's talk about this real quick. Here what I've done, this is a very tall aerial view of the Butler Fairgrounds. This is the American Glass Company complexes right here that we've just been discussing. This is the center of the roof where they had one sniper team, and here's the other sniper team here. What I did was on Google Maps here, I just took 200 foot, that was how big the scale bar was, and I said, okay, give me a circle that's 1,000 feet across. By the way, for snipers, this is nothing. They go out to 1,000 yards, right? So these circles could be a lot bigger, but couple things about sniper teams that I've been hearing about from people who are snipers and have run such security details. They actually operate better at a distance. If you bring them all in close, right? Like the optics, like there's a reason you have all those people with the handguns and then with the folding stock submachine guns. And then you've got the people in their full battle gear, which you saw after Trump was shot. Dudes and black kitted out dudes got up and their guns at the low ready and they're scanning everything, right? And they had good close quarter battle rifles. That's fine. Snipers, you push them out a little bit. So first thing is, it's completely bizarre that they put both sniper teams on top of each other, even if we said these are bad snipers and they can only shoot out 1,000 feet, which is the diameter of these two circles. And I've put one centered over barn 1 and one centered over barn 2. Well, they have completely overlapping spaces. So you're saying, oh, yeah, but Chris, I heard they were short-staffed, so they were stretched thin. They had a skeleton crew. They were doing the best they could. No, they weren't. Because rule 1 of being short-manned is you don't stack them on the same thing, right? It's like, that's like, this has got to be the stupidest, least efficient use of resources ever, right? Instead, imagine what would have happened if they put one on that building I just mentioned there. So there's the red X up here, right? On that tallest building where you have not just commanding view of all of this stuff going on down here. And go ahead, leave your other sniper team right in tight on Trump if you want to. I could make stronger arguments for putting him out a little bit, but that's okay. This person here can see all the way anybody coming in from the backside. They could see anything going on over here. In fact, if we imagine that they can shoot out effectively 2,000 yards, this circle gets a lot bigger. So sniper team 1 goes there. Sniper team 2 is on this roof, and they can then cover all of these roof complexes as well as this whole facility. This is a no-brainer. This is what should have happened, obviously. I mean, this is just common sense, right? That's how we like to roll at Peak Prosperity. It's like, what makes sense? Well, this makes a lot more sense. Okay. And if we gave these red circles 1,000 feet of range, okay, I've just doubled the circle size, so it has a diameter now of 2,000 instead of a diameter of 1,000, okay? And now I think you can see that is pretty good complete coverage, right? That's what it should have looked like. Okay. Now, to really get to the bottom of this, we also have to consider just how derelict this timeline is. We're supposed to believe that somehow this makes sense, but if we can't make sense of it, we're going to make sense of it in the scheme of security lapses. No. Let's check this timeline out. So this came out on 7/18, 2024. So that's yesterday at the time of me recording this. So today's the 19th. In BBC, they said a timeline leading up to the Trump shooting. Of course, they use this crazy British time. So 1711 is 5:11 to us Americans. But 1711, local officers spot Crooks and notify other law enforcement, but then lose track of him, according to briefings between police and lawmakers. So 5:11, suspicious dude, lost him. Where you go? At 5:45 or 17:45 here, a counter sniper officer calls in with a report and a photo of a man who turned out to be Crooks acting suspiciously around a building near the rally. Okay, now this is interesting. A counter sniper officer. So this person has to be over by the American Glass building complex, because that's the only place that we know that Crooks has been spotted so far. Obviously on the roof, but even before then, an hour before, he's seen walking around that building, literally right on the front face of the roof line off of which he allegedly shot. And I'm saying allegedly because we still don't have any evidence that a gun was fired from that exact spot. We're told that's what happened, but do we have any brass casings that we can see? Has a gun residue test been done on that gun to prove it's been fired? Have we seen what's remaining in the magazine of the gun to maybe match the casings that are found on the outside, etc., right? So those would be normal things you would do to evidentiarily establish that those shots, that gun had been fired. So that hasn't been done yet, and I'm a very cautious person. I'll tell you what I know, tell you what I don't know. I do not know where the guns that were fired from yet, because I haven't seen a single one of those photos, which is interesting. Okay, so that's at 5:45, right? Counter sniper officer, somebody's over there. So that person for sure doesn't have to act on the unified comm channel that somehow got garbled and they couldn't talk to each other. That person is part of Secret Service. So they presumably get on the horn and they talk to other Secret Service like, hey, I got a suspicious dude here. Suspicious. And by suspicious, at 5:52 or 17:52 on this timeline, a U.S. Secret Service became aware then also of a suspicious person with a rangefinder on the ground, okay, according to sources familiar with a briefing to the lawmaker. So now we have a rangefinder, which is a laser device. You put it up, hunters use them, a lot of people use them, and it tells you how far away a target is. So pretty standard thing that you would use if you're thinking about shooting something, right? It's a pretty unusual thing for an average citizen to be walking around with, but maybe not entirely unheard of. Kind of fun. How far away are things? I get it, but it is suspicious, certainly at a presidential event, and your whole job is to be suspicious of people who could be security threats. You know, I'm out in the park, I see some guy with a rangefinder, I might just like go, but at this thing? Yeah. So that's at 5:52, okay? And then they say here at 6:03, Trump begins speaking. Around 6:09, rally goers spot Crooks. Those are all the people, the guy with the red hat, you know, oh my God, guy on the roof. And he's got a gun, right? And by the way, they left something out of the BBC. Rally goers spot Crooks on the roof with a rifle, okay? And then 2 interminable minutes later, he somehow ends up opening fire, they say, and then he's fatally shot by Secret Service, and not a couple of seconds later, but they say it here. Yeah. Many seconds later. Now, that's interesting because also here on the 17th of July, we have this story going around. So we just have like stories flying around everywhere. And by the way, investigators are trying to determine motive for Thomas Matthew Crooks, they say. They actually ought to be trying to determine where the second shooter was so that they could get on that as quickly as possible. That would be awesome. Quote, law enforcement officials investigating the assassination attempt told lawmakers Wednesday that 20 minutes passed between the time U.S. Secret Service snipers first spotted the gunman on a rooftop and the time shots were fired. Whoa, 20 minutes. Okay. Stop. Hold up. Let's walk through this together, shall we? Okay. So there's 2 minutes when people are pointing up at the roof saying, look, there's a guy with a gun, okay? And 20 minutes, though. 20 minutes, somebody on the roof, they've been spotting this guy. That's a long time. That's why, and I need to know which snipers, because we saw those 2 snipers on the far left red roof as we're looking at it, but to Trump's stage right. There were those 2, and, were the ones lying down on the gun and the other one's like startled when something happens, when the shots get fired. And startle's a little too much for a highly trained sniper in my world, unless a bullet was snapping right by their ear or something that was a startle reflex. Or, hear me out, he was startled because they had already been told this person wasn't a threat. And then when you see them fire, because your expectation is this person isn't a threat because somebody's told that to you in your earpiece. I'm just speculating. But something caused that person to startle in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect from your average, very well-trained sniper. They go to the range. They're around loud explosions all the time. They have live fire stuff where they have rounds snap past them because it's part of the training. So presumably somewhat used to all this stuff. That dude startled in a really watch it again. Watch how, it's a big reaction. So curious, right? But a lot of curious things. So 20 minutes, they've spotted this guy on the roof. So he's on the roof 20 minutes. And then for 2 minutes, people are like, he's got a gun, right? And then we'll carry on with what happens the rest of that story. But this is bizarre. Quoting further, officials said the snipers spotted the suspect 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks on the roof of the building outside the security zone at 5:52. And the shooting happened at 6:12, 20 minutes later, 5:52. Snipers. Which snipers? The snipers on team 1 or team 2? But the snipers are there, and they have a counter sniper person. So Secret Service, at a minimum, has 3 people. Snipers, that probably a nest, a team of them, and that counter sniper official. Now we have 3 of them on the job. 20 minutes, okay? Even if you know nothing about nothing, and you haven't had 20 minutes of warning, and you don't have your suspicions up, and you aren't slightly alarmed because, you're a moron or something, but even if all that's true, the level of incompetence then for Secret Service to have information for at least 2 minutes, because, the cat's out of the bag, people have finally started yelling, there's a dude on the roof with a gun, for them to not have hustled Donald Trump off the stage. It's a huge breach of common sense and protocol. Doesn't make any sense at all. So this is the setup. The Secret Service has had all this information. They're taking pictures of this guy. They've lost track of him. They found him again. They see him on a roof. Then they see him on a roof with a gun, and don't do anything. And with all of that, we have to end up listening to this.
On that, does the president have confidence in the Secret Service director after Saturday's failures?
I have 100% confidence in the director of the United States Secret Service. I have 100% confidence in the United States Secret Service. And what you saw on stage on Saturday with respect to individuals putting their...
I don't need to listen to the rest of that. 100% confidence. Really? Not 99? 98.6? 100%. Really? That's Mayorkas, obviously head of HHS. I consider this gentleman to be a traitor to the country. Of course, he's done enormous damage to this country across many, many dimensions, and not least of which is this most recent misadventure here, which is very bad, obviously. And he's responsible for the open border stuff, which is very damaging, and many other things. So just a bad guy all around, but 100% confidence. Come on, you can circle the wagons, you can have your professional responsibility, but you have to, come on. Here, try this, Mayorkas. My confidence has been shaken a little, as has everybody's, but we'll get to the bottom of it and we'll figure out what we have to do to make sure this never happens again. You don't say you have 100% confidence, because 100 is as high as it goes. That's it. This knob doesn't go to 11, right? That's it. 100%. No questions whatsoever about Kim Cheadle and her organization, despite the fact that anyway, very bizarre, but I really despise this gentleman quite a lot. Hey, by the way, here are all the things that this year have outsmarted the Secret Service. Just having a little fun. Bag of cocaine. Remember, they're like, wait, I don't know, cocaine just showed up in the White House. We're stumped. And the holster. Good going, whoever put that together. This is interesting. So thank 56 Panhead there on Twitter, saying, direct this my direction on Twitter, that Josh Hawley has said to Senator Mayorkas, hey, quote, I write to raise concerns brought to me by whistleblowers. Oh, get this. About your department's stunning failure to protect former President Trump. Stunning indeed, right? On July 13th, 2024, as Secretary of Homeland Security, DHS, you are ultimately responsible for your agency. Shouldn't have to remind him of that, but in this competency crisis we're experiencing, good to remind people of that, including the U.S. Secret Service. I just pasted this in, that green line. I just wanted you to see that this is still the same letter. So this is a little copy paste, but I didn't change anything. Okay. Quote, whistleblowers who have direct knowledge of the event have approached my office. According to the allegations on July 13th, the July 13th rally was considered to be a loose security event. For example, detection canines were not used to monitor entry and detect threats in the usual manner. Individuals without proper designations were able to gain access to backstage areas. Department personnel did not appropriately police the security buffer around the podium, and were also not stationed at regular intervals around the event's security perimeter. In addition, Whistleblower allegations suggest the majority of DHS officials were not, in fact, USSS agents, but instead drawn from the department's Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. Really? Who made that decision, right? This is especially concerning given that HSI agents were unfamiliar with standard protocols typically used at these type of events, according to the allegations. Protocols like not standing the subject, your protectorate dude back, not standing Trump back up, like, oh yeah, what's that? Oh, the perp is down? Good, let's stand him up. Like, how do you know there wasn't a second perp? We've covered this. I mean, I was yelling at the screen when I was watching it happen when they stood him back up again. I'm like, what are you doing? That's crazy talk right there. And so actually, Josh goes on to ask a bunch of questions here. What percentage were from the HSI, blah, blah, blah. Actually, Josh, you know what? We need to know who precisely made the decision to leave that roof undefended out of the security perimeter at 140 yards. Listen, typical security perimeters for professionals is 400 to 500 yards. 140 yards is chip shot territory. Who made the decision, and who made the decision to place the sniper teams where they did? We need to know that, because if that's just pure incompetence, they need to be fired immediately. No question, just get out of here. But if it was more than that, we also need to know that. This feels like it's starting to deflect into this is weak, right? Why were agents appropriately stationed around the podium? This is weak, Josh, if it turns out that it had nothing to do with where they stationed appropriately, that there was a second shooter, and the profoundness of the security lapse of not covering the most obvious security points was so profoundly bad that we don't even need to ask if there was, some training issues going on with the people who are directly around the podium. This doesn't feel right to me. Those aren't the hard questions. And Josh usually asks really good hard questions. Now, to add to the confusion, let's turn now to watching the local people. Of course, the first thing Kim Cheadle did was she threw the local police under the bus. Oh, they were responsible for that building, she said. And then later she backtracked a little and said, well, I guess we were all responsible. But let's listen in now, because this gets really bizarre.
Fell approximately 8 feet to the ground.
So here's what the township manager told me. He said that the local Butler Township Police Department was not responsible for securing that building, that it was in the hands of another local law enforcement agency. The Secret Service has said it was outside of their perimeter. We don't know what local agency was responsible for securing that building, but it was these 4 officers that showed up. He said they could not get to the rooftop. They were responding to a report of a suspicious person on top of the roof.
So at this late stage, this video is just put out today. So here we are 6 days later, and we can't answer the most basic question, which was, who exactly was responsible for securing that building? Okay, let's even imagine it was these local law enforcement guys, right? Well, apparently a 20-year-old could figure out how to clamber up onto this roof, at most using a 5-foot ladder, but potentially not using any ladder whatsoever. And they didn't have a way of getting up onto the roof. Like, they're just like how this isn't even, I understand you can get some inept people, but this is, something I don't understand. And we should also be able to clearly get the name of the Secret Service agent who said, I hereby hand responsibility for this roof complex, the most obvious roof complex in the whole thing. I, Agent Smith, hand that responsibility to Officer Doofus. Okay. They should be able to tell us exactly that. So they still don't know. And there's some confusion about this whole thing. Okay. And here's where the story just goes
approximately 8 feet to the ground.
Sorry. So the earlier part of that is that gentleman, I don't have that video. Shoot. Describing how an officer was hoisted to the roof line, pulled himself up, saw Crooks, who pointed a gun rifle barrel at him, dropped down, as he described it, lost his grip, dropped down, and then the story just well, then what did he do? Right? Did he call anybody? They're like, oh no, shots rang out shortly thereafter. That's not a number. 10 seconds later, a minute later, 20 minutes later, shortly doesn't count. So So there's that, but why was an officer attempting to hoist himself up onto the roof in the first place? It's bizarre because you don't have ladders, and you didn't have people should have been up and down onto that roof numerous times already, because that's part of the job, right? Even if it was too hot and you didn't want to be up there, you would go up there. You would have a way up there, right? You would know how you would go up there. And second of all, I can't find a single spot on my tour of that building where you could hoist yourself up and fall 8 feet. I don't know where that would be, because they don't have any roof lines that look kind of like that. So the whole story is bizarre. And then we want to know exactly where did he hoist himself up, right? And, where was he peeking over the edge? Because there aren't any roof lines like that. The whole thing is weird and it's incomplete. And so that's a problem. So we're going to keep digging at this, but the level of confusion around the most basic things is really starting to stack up. And some of that's intentional and some of that's just clue bagness. Okay. All right. Now, some of you have said that, and I've gotten this a bunch, that person on the roof who's dead isn't Crooks. And I think it is, and here's why. But here's the sort of stuff that's floating around right now. This is interesting. So here's an eyewitness.
But you were outside.
Yeah, I was on the outside of the fence.
So you had a good view of...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we saw him. We were, like I said, 30, 40 yards away from him.
Was he by himself or was there anybody else?
Yeah, I didn't see anyone else. I just saw him on the roof with the rifle.
Was he a young man or old?
He looked to be between the ages of 30 and 40-ish. He wasn't super old, but kind of young.
30 and 40, that's weird because Crooks is 20, right? Not 30 and 40. And somebody that age clearly would know the difference between somebody who's younger and older. So we had that confusion to start with. And then there were people saying, well, he looks a lot like this guy, right? Who has, thick hair and glasses, and he's a known Antifa guy, and he's 37 years old. So there was some speculation that the actual shooter that's dead on the roof was Maxwell Urick. And I don't think it's the case. So we know we had this picture, right? Which I think we have to agree is the shooter because the same t-shirt, same glasses, same scruffy facial hair. Looks right. Hair is a little wrong. Don't know what to make of that yet, but there we are. And, but notice here, we're looking at his left ear and it's got a smooth rim. Okay. However, if we look at the photo here of Crooks from high school, you see, this is, get my drawing tool thing, laser pointer. This is that left ear. It's smooth, but I want you to look carefully here. You see, there's like these little protuberances. It's a very distinctly misshapen ear, if I could use that term. There's a little bump sticking out. It's got a flat spot on it. It's not normal. It's very distinctive. Let me put it that way. This here is the shooter's ear on the roof. There's one of the blood trails coming down. A lot of people made something over this. It looked like they said it was an ear gauge, a hole in the ear that had been closed up. So therefore, it would be consistent with Urick, who has an ear gauge. However, these bumps, these protuberances, line up perfectly with this. So I am very, very confident that the person we're looking at is actually the guy in the yearbook photo who we're told is Thomas Crooks. Okay, so that's it. I'm pretty sure all of that's true. So, hey, thank you very much for listening today. We're going to keep on this. And again, if you have any interest in joining the citizens investigation, we need all kinds of help. If you have any tips for us, please send them along. If you have any ideas where we've got this stuff wrong or need to think about it more deeply, get a hold of us. And anything you want to send to me personally, just send it to info@peakprosperity.com. It'll get right to me. Find me on Twitter. Come by Peak Prosperity and leave a message. DM me. Whatever you need to do. We're looking for photos, videos, especially more audio. There's a lot of cameras out there. We need more audio of this, particularly audio that isn't garbled by a lot of screaming. That would be awesome. And any other stuff that you've got, we want to look at this because we can't just let this slide away. This is our chance to make sure that we don't have another JFK 50 years later. We all know that bad things happen, but we can't do anything because too much time has passed. This is still fresh. This is our chance. We got to make sure we get this story right. And hey, maybe I've got it completely wrong. I'm totally open to that. But the way the information is stacking up right now, we have way too many lapses for us to say they were just lapses. So that's where we're at. All right, with that, thanks very much for listening. Hey, have a great weekend if you're watching this on Friday. We'll be back at this. I'm sure I'll be at this all weekend too. So please give us any help you can. Thank you so much. Bye for now.